Welcome everybody to a Fango and Convo conversation with the writer, director, and cast member of the movie SEANCE. I'm Bobby Torrez, also from Bobby Likes a Spooky on YouTube. And I'm joined by writer and director Simon Barrett of SEANCE. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you,
How are
Bobby.
you?
Good.
I just have to say real quick, I also enjoy your work. I love Your Next and I love Blair Witch and all that other stuff. So
Thank you. Thanks. Blair Witch.
awesome.
Nice.
He's a Blair Witch. All right. And I'm also joined by Inanna Sarkis. How's it going, Inanna?
Hi, good. How are you?
I am great. I'm excited to talk about Seance. When I first watched this, it wasn't what I expected in a good way. And it had a nice twist, which was great. So, but I want the people to watch the movie to figure out what that is. All right. So, would you guys like to tell everybody what Seance is about?
I'll take that if you want. Look, Seance is a kind of supernatural murder mystery set at a girls' boarding school where like a new student is put in a dorm room where the previous resident died somewhat mysteriously, and she starts kind of trying to figure out what happened to her. And that's mainly the story,
In a nutshell.
Yeah. I think we're not hearing you, Bobby.
Oh, you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was saying that it is great for everybody that's going to watch the movie. I'm there and for a little surprise. What was the inspiration behind the film?
I don't ever really think about what inspires my film until I end up doing interviews like this one, and then gradually I have to think about it enough that I usually do kind of figure out the answer. In this case, when I was growing up, my mother was writing mystery fiction. She had a couple stories published in like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Amazing Stories and publications like that, which don't exist anymore, and you all might not even really know what I'm talking about. But this was a kind of a thing back in like the 80s, and so I really just grew up reading murder mysteries from as long as I can remember, and when I developed kind of an interest in horror and particularly ghost stories, the fusion of those was really something that excited me. So I just always enjoyed, because ghost stories are really usually murder mysteries as well. You're usually trying to find out who killed the person who's now dead and haunting you, so you can like put their body to rest or whatever. And so so that was just a story that I always really enjoyed consuming as a viewer and as a reader. And I kind of felt like if I ever get a chance to direct a feature, that was the first story I'd want to try to tell.
Oh, nice. I love that. So I must say, I'm a big person when it comes to film, environment, music, way things look, because I feel like music, atmosphere, all those obviously makes a film, along with a whole bunch of other things, but you have to kind of set the tone. So the tone of this movie was kind of, in my opinion, a little dreadful, but also fun. And then the music also fit perfectly with everything. So would you like to tell me what behind that and how you put all of that together?
Yeah, I mean, tone is a complicated thing, right? You can't just like say like I want this movie to have this tone and everyone like nods and does it. It's not like a lens or a light or anything like that, or it's a subtle thing. So that could be like, I think this whole interview to a certain extent, just talking about like how like I got like Inanna and the other cast to kind of trust me, with like being, playing their characters sometimes very like unlikably and things like that. Because the tone of it, I kind of knew was going to be a little fun and enjoyable, but you wouldn't necessarily get that from the scenes until they're put together with, like you said, the score by Sickerman, and various the cinematography by Karim Hussein, which we shot the film using mostly like old anamorphic lenses. It's like certain things like that. I didn't want to do those things for like empty stylistic reasons, but I knew that I wanted the film to have a certain kind of classical atmosphere. I wanted to try to make it look like we were filming in like an old school building, which of course we were not. So little things like that, there's just like all these little kind of tricks to try to put together what you think the right atmosphere, as you said, for a film like that is. Because if you really look at like old Gialli and the kind of films that Seance is riffing on, even the 90s kind of slasher boom, which Seance is really riffing on, like the urban legends of it all. those movies do have kind of a great sense of morbidity and atmosphere. And so I did want to recreate that. Sickerman, working with Sickerman on the score, one of the reasons I wanted to work with him, his real name's Tobias. One of the reasons I wanted to work with Tobias is because he hadn't done a film before. He's a German experimental theater artist. He'd done a hip hop album where he did the beats for a rapper that I like named Serengeti. Okay. And so I had the Serengeti album, and I was just really interested in the person who created this music for the lyrics and stuff. And so I just reached out to him and was like, can you do more kind of classical stuff for me, more of like a Philip Glass, Michael Nyman kind of thing? And he, was instantly into that idea. And so it's like little things like that. It's like the tone of the guest was really defined by its music. And I wanted Seance to feel kind of like what Adam did with that film, but using a different style. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It worked.
Oh, thank you.
Like usually, again, like I said, when you watch movies, music and all that plays a huge part in the movie, and it just kind of just puts you in this atmosphere. It actually like sucked me in, which I was just like, whoa, this is great. And it takes a lot of things to come together in order for it to do that, at least for me. So Inanna, your character Alice, she's a bit of a mean girl, but also a little likable. I like a good what attracted you to that role, and what did you have to do to prepare for that?
I feel like I always get attracted to the mean girl type villain-ish roles, but I'm glad you found it somewhat or her somewhat likable, because that was something that Simon and I had discussed. But to prepare for it, definitely I tried to think about, like I said before, about the bullies in my school and like people that had bullied me growing up. So I used situations that had happened to me in the past, and just like trying to figure out her characteristics and just bring them into the film.
I have an issue with how characters sometimes play toughness. And I think what Inanna, like I don't think Inanna looked at Alice as just being like, this bully girl who has nothing to her other than like, pure sadism or whatever. It was more that like, I think if you're going to have a character who's tough, and I think a lot of movies get this wrong, you have to kind of show why they became that way and make that a real part of their personality. So like something that's interesting about, I think, the character of Alice, and Inanna let this show through, I think, in kind of a brave way, because it's the kind of thing where like you could appear very silly, I think, doing an unlikable performance like this. And obviously, the goal is to kind of laugh at the character, fairly often in some of these scenes, but Inanna's a director, so she got that from a directing perspective and would go for it. Something that I think is interesting is you do see Alice get sadder and more subdued as the film goes on, because she's not just like untouched by these things. It's affecting her and changing her, and she's becoming a different person. Like I think that's the kind of thing that I feel like a lot of movies get wrong. They just have characters act tough, but tough people don't act tough. My first jujitsu sensei was a woman in like probably her 50s or 60s, who's one of the most terrifying people I've ever met. Like truly someone who could take your little finger and make you dance like for an hour. You'd just be in so much pain, just like put you in a lock and you just couldn't get out of it. You would just be like tapping, and she never acted tough. She never like said she did that. She's a very quiet person. And so I think like that like, when I was a private investigator, I would work with people who were genuinely tough, who carried guns and had killed people and stuff. And so, and you just would never know it from talking to them. So I think with Suki and Inanna, like they're both very tough, strong characters, but that needed to come from a reality, and you needed to never, broadcast that too much. It needed to feel real. And again, I like the idea that Alice is very protective of her friends, and then she starts doing a bad job. She's not doing a good job of protecting them, and she knows that, and she starts to kind of spiral. And again, that's the kind of thing you can't necessarily get an actor to easily trust you to do. But I was thrilled to work with Inanna on that.
Yeah, that's why I said that she was a bit likable, because like even though she comes off as like the being,
I think she's very likable. Yeah. No, I think she's like, also it's movie likability, right? She's entertaining. You might not like to spend time with Alice in reality. Although, I mean, I would, but like you definitely want to spend time with her as a character in a movie because she's funny and she's doing things. So yeah.
Same here. That's why I said I like a good mean girl. Well, most of them, because other movies, sometimes they could just be like, I never want to spend time with this person. But Alice, Inanna's character, I feel like I would love to hang with that character.
Oh yeah, you know she's going to do something fun.
I'll try my best to protect you, but I may not succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might get murdered, but you'll have an like entertaining evening.
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. There's obviously a lot of things going on in this film. Like I see different genres being played with, because again, you go into this film thinking one thing, but it kind of turns out to be something else. Which is again great. That's what makes this film obviously different. But there's particular two characters in here that was kind of playing with, some queer tones, or I should say that just in time for Pride Month, which I love, is not, and it's rare that you see any of that in today's movies. So what made you go that route with those two characters as far as some attraction to each other?
I guess I just don't see, I mean, sexuality is obviously not like a binary thing, and yeah. I felt like it was just kind of realistic to the circumstances. I wanted to kind of have a romance in the film, but I also didn't want to feel like I was trying to say anything about that experience at that age. Being a young woman at that age is something that I do not feel the ability to knowledgeably comment upon. But I did just want, I wanted this to be a film that didn't, like, because the Suki's character is very kind of shut down at the beginning. I didn't want it to be a film where, human connection feels impossible. I wanted it to be a slightly more optimistic film about the ability of human beings to relate to one another than say, like, perhaps Your Next or The Guest, or Blair Witch for that matter. So with that in mind, I don't know. The romance kind of wrote itself into the script really organically, because I think in a lot of those murder mysteries that I'm describing, particularly actually Georgette Heyer was a big influence on this project, and she always intermingled romance. She basically wrote either romance novels or mysteries that were romances. In particular, her books Death in the Stocks and Envious Casca are two of my favorites, and those were real inspirations for SEANCE. And of course, she was writing back, like 100 years ago, so the romances tended to be fairly heteronormative, as we might say. But still, that romance is all, it feels like part of it. In times of morbidity and death, characters' emotions are heightened, characters come together, it's fun. So I just wanted to do something with that and kind of try to, be faithful to the reality of who I thought those characters were. But without trying to do like blue is the warmest color or something where I like would kind of be like, well, what am I really saying? And maybe people want me to shut up.
So Inanna, working with all the girls there, because I felt like this particular group of characters, even though I said like you come off as the mean girl, but you gelled so well with everybody, like the rest of the cast. How was that experience? And like, did you guys develop a real, friendship, during the set?
I mean, it was great. I actually still talk to the girls. So I think it was a great experience. And again, we were like filming in Winnipeg in the middle of nowhere. So it was good to at least have like people to talk to on the weekend. And we all like had a little wine night on the weekend. So even while Simon was working away, we were like,
yeah. Well, I mean, the cast really quickly figured out, I mean, they might not have they probably did not want to invite me to these things, but they also really quickly figured out that I wasn't gonna be hanging out during.
And he's like, no, I have work to do.
I did. I mean, my weekends didn't exist on SEANCE, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were shot and everything so quickly. So I feel like you were busy like working on the next scenes and stuff while we were, but it was good because while we were connecting, we were also like running lines. So it just became to flow like so much more natural that way. I would work on like Madison's scenes with her when it was her time, and then she would help me do my scenes. So it really helped us at least like study our lines and like, get into the flow of stuff. So I loved it.
I didn't even know that. I just found that out now. I had no idea what you all were doing. I just know that when you showed up, you'd all basically know your lines, and I was happy. Like, I stayed in a different place than them because I was just like, the cast is just gonna like stress me out. If I see them, I'm gonna have to pretend that I'm not freaking out on the weekends, and I'm not sure I can like hold it together like completely when I don't want them to like come down in the lobby and I'm like, you know, like shivering in the corner, like smoking a joint and like, you know, stress puking onto my laptop keyboard. You know, I didn't, you know, so I stayed in an apartment with the crew, which was great because actually the grip came, like I remember one time one of our grips, it wasn't our key grip, it was one of our dolly grips was coming home at like 4 a.m. and he ran into Kareem and I at the elevator and he's like, this is the first time I've ever stayed in the same place as the director. And you could see his mood totally improved after that. He's like, because we were staying in a shitty place, but as soon as he figured out that I was staying there too, he was like, oh, this is just a shitty movie. Okay, like, yeah, everyone's unhappy. Like, this is just a difficult production. Like, got it. Yeah. Yeah, it was. But no, I mean, Winnipeg, I want to emphasize, Winnipeg was so cold when we were there because we were filming in November, December 2019. That like it was like
that it is, yeah, during those months. Like
it was brutal. Well, I think it maybe gets a little worse in January. I would never want to find out. But like, I mean, it was cold enough that like going outside, it felt like belly flopping into like a lake of ice. Like you would, it was the temperature was below zero for almost our entire shoot, and so there wasn't any going out and partying. Like, you know, you didn't want to go out anywhere. You didn't want to go outside, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of, I think, kind of helped with the boarding school vibe of the movie. Because the real premise of the movie is like Inanna's character and like the other girls in the film are just like bored. That's why I like boarding schools. It's like, that's the fun of it. Yeah, they're just like doing things as they're bored. And the reality, I think that became true very quickly.
But when we're all that age, we do stuff like that. And you're bored, hey, let's just hold a seance. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, they're just pranking. They're just constantly pranking each other because they have nothing to do, which I think is realistic. I grew up in a very small town, and like my friends and I literally like in like middle school and high school used to like knock each other out for entertainment. I mean, we were so bored.
Wow.
You know?
Like play fighting.
Well, you know, no, we do like the thing where like you choke yourself out. Like you choke each other out, or like where you take a bunch of deep breaths and then you compress your chest or you compress your arteries and you black out, but you have like hallucinations while you're unconscious. Yeah. See, this is the thing about growing up in mid-Missouri that like, you know, I have unique insight into like extreme boredom. And you know, obviously like at an extreme level that leads to like methamphetamine usage. But at our level, we were just like choking each other out for entertainment. Because you'd have like a crazy dream while you were unconscious, and like we were doing this thing like class in high school and stuff.
Oh my gosh!
You know, you'd take a bunch of deep breaths and you'd hold your breath and compress your chest and you black out for just a few seconds, but it feels. I really shouldn't be describing this. Don't
do this. Putting in so much detail. Someone's gonna. Don't try this at home, guys.
Don't do this.
Kids don't.
Oh, and actually, I do remember. Like I did it to my friend Matt once, and I knocked him out. And he like fell and hit his head, you know, on one of those pencil erasers mounted on the wall. He like fell and like cracked his head on it, and then was like kind of doing like a little seizure thing. So yeah, so don't do it.
Wow.
But he's fine. He's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Folks,
yeah.
don't do this
he was
at
fine.
home.
He was fine. Yeah, don't knock yourself out for entertainment. But that's the kind of like extreme boredom as a teenager that I find like just coming from where I come from. That's kind of why I think I wanted to set it in an isolated boarding school, even though like I went to public school. I've never been to a boarding school. Inanna, I think is the same. Yeah. And so like, you know, we don't have any like actual firsthand experience of this. We're both public school kids. But yeah, and yeah, which is good, I think. But I always liked the isolation of a boarding school in theory and just like just that sense of like being isolated and having nothing to do. Leading to be like, let's just come up with a bunch of elaborate pranks. Yeah.
And it makes it a lot scarier as well because you're separated from everybody, and it being cold actually shows in this film too. So I mean, just all of that, the whole.
I mean that was the thing is like Inanna would be outside filming cold scenes, and you know it'd be miserable. You know, I'd be out there with her. We were just like dying, and we were I think like the only two people that kind of figured out that like the trick to surviving the cold was not getting warm.
Going in the hot tent.
Yeah, don't go in the hot tent. Don't go in the actor hot tent. It'll just like kill you.
Just like come outside and you're even more cold. You're like, well, that was
the way they do these things. because, you know, actors are always treated like, you know, like weird, you know, kind of precious malfunctioning children on a film set. And you know, sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. I mean, I think you know, quite a few of our cast did have a lot of colds and stuff during this production because it was just so difficult. But it was also because we'd be out filming the cold, and then whenever we'd cut and do a new setup, they'd all be like rushed into these tents with all these heat lamps where it was like probably like, you know, 100 degrees, and then you yanked out and you start sweating.
Exactly. I feel like the change of climate is what was making people go even more bananas, because it's like you're going from like super hot to like freezing cold and back and forth every time the scene cuts. It's just, and it prolongs the takes too, because then you have to wait until everyone comes back.
You have to wait for everyone to come back, but I couldn't say don't go to the warm tent. But Inanna, when we filmed like this, you know, there's a scene where Inanna walks out in the snow and is outdoors for a little bit by herself, and yeah, we just stayed out in the cold. We just didn't get warm. Inanna knew the deal. The deal was don't get warm, and then you won't feel quite as cold. But I mean, I remember filming that scene, and it was pretty miserable. But like every time, you know, Inanna would like exhale, you'd see like the, you know, the fog in the air. There was like a little snow.
Legit.
It does look cool. I mean, yeah, the cold does show up on camera. You know, we weren't doing like the styrofoam on the lawn, you know, like filmed in the summer, trying to make it like a winter thing. It was cold.
It was real.
Hey, that works for the film. All right, well, before we go, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I love hearing these stories. What is your favorite scary movie? I ask this all the time when I'm doing interviews and things like that. I'm just curious to get inside y'all heads. What is your favorite scary movie, or what scary movie you would recommend to somebody that's not a huge?
You go first. I have to think about it, because again, I don't.
I have an answer. It's probably the movie that scared me most in theaters, like ever. Not as a child, because I was traumatized by different movies as a little kid, because movies themselves just inherently scare me. But like once I understood movies, I think I was like 13 or 14 when I went to go see Candyman, and that movie just like Candyman. So I was like a skater at the time. I had like long hair. I looked like a fool. But I remember like pulling my hair down in front of my eyes, because I would sit in the front row at these movies. So I was in the front row at Candyman, pulling my hair down in front of my eyes because I like didn't want to look at the screen. I think that's a really scary film, and I really love like all the ingredients of that film. You know, Bernard Rose working from that Clive Barker story with that Philip Glass score, like they really created something absolutely magical. And I just think the scares in that movie and the vibe that it has is so unique. So, you know, I could always like point people to something more classical, like the original Night of the Living Dead or The Haunting or something. But Candyman to me is a genuinely scary horror film. That's actually great, because a lot of the horror films I love are movies like Reanimator or Evil Dead or Brain Dead that aren't really scary. They're more kind of in the funny vein.
Yeah.
But Candyman takes itself pretty damn seriously. There are some jokes in it, but it's a pretty somber film, and the original source material is pretty somber as well. And so that's my go-to. That movie is just a
that's a great one. I will say real quickly, nightmares for days as a kid, but that's all I'm gonna say.
Candyman. I mean, it is a movie that like, so I shouldn't have been able to see it in theaters. I'm sure I got someone to buy a ticket for me. And I remember like getting my friends to rent it when it came out on video, and just, we were all instantly traumatized. It's genuinely, it was the first movie that did that mirror scare. Like that I really remember. Like,
oh shit.
Yeah, where you like shut the mirror and there's like a silhouette behind you. It was the first movie that did that, and I just like could not look in the mirror.
The ones that freak me out the most are like, I don't know which movie had this. I feel like I shut it out of my consciousness, but I don't know which scene was it where there's like a girl showering. Like the shower scares are the worst, because then I would like look at the curtain chain and be like, is there someone there? Isn't there? Like, what movie had that? Because
you're thinking of Psycho.
Is it?
No, no, maybe. No, I mean, there's a lot of movies that do that. I mean, The Grudge did that, like with the hand on the back.
Psycho. I think those were the ones, because I could not shower. I would have to like look every 5 seconds, and I hated it. But
when I was a kid, I had like a black shower curtain because I was, you know, trying to be goth or whatever. And it was like, it was the same thing. I couldn't see out of it. So like every now and then I'd be like, did I hear something?
Yeah, it freaked me out. I wouldn't be able to shower by myself. Like I would have to have my parents home to shower, because I would just be scared. But I remember, I don't know if this is that scary, but it was one that stuck with me. And I feel like a good scary movie is always like you remember those moments like the shower scene or like where in real life you're actually scared. So for me it was like Final Destination where like
I love Final Destination.
And I never went tanning like ever because I'm like,
part 3.
I was just going to say that's part 3. That's Final Destination 3 is the tanning bed, which is one of the few films that I still own on DVD because the Blu-ray doesn't have all the great extras. That movie is a masterpiece, Inanna. I had no idea that you were a Final Destination 3 fan.
Yeah, it would scare me. Like, or like, there's just like when you're like driving on a highway, I would never drive behind like a truck with like wood or something that could possibly go into my windshield. So yeah, I feel like
I think I would possibly avoid getting LASIK surgery because of the Final Destination movies.
Yes.
Like I've never been in a tanning bed, but it's true that tanning bed scene it's actually like it's funny because those movies, I think, particularly the odd numbered ones, are such like avant-garde masterpieces. But but there are some scenes that I just can't watch, and the tanning bed scene is actually one of them. Like where despite the actors looking like great in that scene and the style of that scene and how like that blue lighting looks so intense as it gets like hotter, I just can't watch it. Like when the skin starts bubbling, I'm just like, okay, like this is just too much. Yeah. So I mean that's all, but that's funny. Like as a horror filmmaker, because I mean, I definitely like there's moments. There's a moment in Seance where someone gets a nail pressed against their knee, and people tend to really wince at that, and I'm just like, oh, that's just like Suki and a rubber nail. Like, so I'm sure the people who made Final Destination 3 are just like, oh, that's like fun. But yeah.
Well, thanks for your picks, guys. I really, really appreciate it. Those are some great picks. A lot of people don't talk about Candyman enough, or Final Destination for that matter. So those are good ones.
Well, we've got another Candyman coming, but when do we get another Final Destination? That's the real question. I'm excited for this new Candyman. I don't know what I would do, but I mean, because Cabrini Green's gone. Yeah. Like how do they embrace that new narrative? I'm excited to find out, but I would also like be equally as excited for Final Destination 6. So I'm kind of probably like a bad film fan.
Well, we shall see.
Horror, I feel like I actually know a lot of horror films just again because of my brother. So I do not I'm like actually intrigued, and if there was another Final Destination, I would watch it, but then I would be like, why did I just watch that? It just messed my whole mind up again.
Well, if they make another Final Destination, we're gonna go see it in theaters.
Okay, yeah, we have to.
All right, deal.
Yes, I would love to see our reactions on Instagram, but we have to end this. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. I can't wait for everybody to check out Seance. It's a film. See it with friends if you could, obviously COVID safe or whatever. And yes, Seance will be out this Friday, May 21st.
Yep.
Yeah, May 21st. It's going to be out in theaters and video on demand. So I want everybody to go check that out. And for everybody that's watching this, please subscribe to Fangoria's YouTube and also subscribe to their newsletter so you can check out more panels like this and kind of put in your ideas of what you want to see in the next panel. I'm Bobby Torrez from Bobby Likes the Spooky, and these are the guests here from the movie Seance.